Hey, it's been a while, and well, I've been up to some things. Number one, I've been cleaning my office. And I've, had a great opportunity today to come into work early and continue that process. So, there you go. And one of the cool things about uh, organizing things and going through things I don't need anymore, and also uh, organizing things that I do need, is that I come across stuff. And today I was kind of gifted to find an affirmation card. So again, my mom used to make these things all the time. Basically, as a kid, she would have these affirmation cards like everywhere. They'd be pinned in the door frames. They'd be on the bathroom mirrors, on the fridge, everywhere, like everywhere. And I have like an entire box of these things. Probably have thousands of them. And I was going through a box today looking for something, and I found this in the box. So I was like, cool. And so the card is I change the world around me by changing myself. Okay, cool. So if that tickles you a little bit, then write that on your forehead or whatever. Keep that if you want. Um, and I love these affirmation cards because for most of my life, I didn't. For most of my life, I didn't think affirmations mattered at all. And I guess that kind of makes sense because I grew up around it, and I didn't really see the results of those affirmations. What I saw was my mom have a hard time with her psychology or mental health, and God bless her. And I'm not saying that she could have done anything differently or been a better person. I love and appreciate my mom the way she was, but um, objectively, I can easily say that she struggled with lots of challenges in her life that she wasn't able to fully comprehend and process, and so that sucks. So there's good and bad and everything, and that's kind of my experience, and it's been really a really cool and revealing process for someone like me to look at these affirmation cards later on, and also I have some of her journals that she wrote that I'm grateful to have, and kind of get to understand who she was, which is super cool. Um, and so in this video, I wanted to talk about this affirmation in particular because I think this can be dangerous, and so I'm going to explain why that is in this video. Okay, so the affirmation is I change the world around me by changing myself. Okay. So why is that true? Number one, why is that true? It is true. Well, yeah, because if you change a part of yourself, the likelihood that you might change something in your environment is pretty high. Maybe. I mean, that depends. Like these are the things with affirmations. So many people make affirmations and they make proclamations and they make these general rules to live by, as if like these little parables that attempt to like make a law or some kind of rigid way of being so that they can hook onto something and have some level of certainty. And the reality is that human beings are complicated, man. Like there's all sorts of steps between here's my thought and here's my result. And there's like a series of gates that I got to go through, and so it gets really difficult. So is it true that if you change that you can change the world around you by changing yourself? I can change the world around me by changing myself. Of course it is. Of course it is. Within certain parameters. Okay, and we all know this. Like if you change yourself, you might wake up one day and be like, you know what? I don't want to eat broccoli anymore. Fine. You stop buying broccoli. Guess what? You change your environment, right? It can be that simple. But it could also be that I just don't want to eat broccoli anymore, but you keep buying broccoli because you're addicted to it or something like that. And then that's a ridiculous example, but that's what I'm saying is that it's really difficult to make a rule that applies in every situation. And I've been really grateful in my life to have teachers and mentors that have shown me some of these rules that actually do apply in every situation, which I've stress tested and seen again and again and again in people's lives and in my own life. So I stay true to more universal laws, and that's not some pseudo-scientific spiritual concept. It's just that there are literal laws that that do apply in every discipline. That you can observe them if you look, and if you know them. Okay, so I change the world around me by changing myself. Fine. Sure, at times, depending. It's all situationally specific, right? At the same time, This is really dangerous. Because why? Okay, I changed the world around me by changing myself. What does that also allow us to do? Let's just put yourself in a situation where, let's say you're chronically depressed. Let's say you're chronically, you're suffering the effects of like a stress disorder or something like that, or some experience that you haven't been able to overcome, maybe some childhood thing, or maybe something in your upbringing at some point in your life, somewhere. Maybe you've had a loss or a grief or some kind of experience that you didn't want, or that, you haven't reconciled yet, or you haven't fully comprehended why it occurred and all these things. And, so you have these questions going on in your mind and they're not being answered, and no one has the quality of the caringness to look at you and be like, okay, let's answer these questions. Like, let's actually create and let's get the meaning that you need to move forward and like let this thing go, or whatever it is, so that you can be a more whole person and move forward, right? It's really difficult to find people like that. I strive to be, or try to be, a person like that for myself and anyone I meet. What I find challenging about an affirmation like this, sorry, I just knocked my phone, is that it sets up a game. Okay, so what do I mean? I change the world around me by changing myself. What that also means is that, see, there's a position here which says my environment is 100% in response to who I am. That's challenging. That's really challenging. That's a real challenging thing. Because why? Now, some people might be like, well, yeah, obviously, right? Of course that's true. But I really got to catch that, because, I would argue to death with that one, because we'll have to go in all the different variables. For example, okay, you're in Syria. You're a 5-year-old kid in Syria, and your house just got bombed, and now your parents are dead, and your sister's mangled all over the wall, and like it's a bad scene, like it's not good, and this would sort of indicate that, well, that's because of who you are. You see where that gets really weird? It's like, are we sure? Are you sure? I mean, sure, some people are going to come on here and be like, oh yeah, but your spiritual being puts you in specific places for specific reasons, so of course you chose it in some way at some level. Like, oh my God, guys, are you like, sure, maybe, if we want to play some real bad delusional games and really just continue propping up our own power over the environment, if you want to go down that road. And maybe there is a moral righteousness to that. Maybe there is a reason why you might want to have that kind of philosophy. Maybe it helps you feel more powerful or something. But in my time working with clients, and also working on my own headspace and kind of getting myself figured out and straightened away, and understanding what I'm responsible for in my life, and taking care of the things I'm responsible for, like becoming a man, in the process of becoming an adult human, like whatever. In my process of becoming an adult human, I've done lots of things. And I've studied my mind. I've studied books. I've read lots of really cool books that I'm really grateful for I found, and that came into my life. And one of them really showed me something which I think is valuable. And so here's a concept for you. In sort of an anti-affirmation, we might say that I change the world around me by changing myself. I'm going to also state that just as effectively, and probably more meaningful as an affirmation, and probably inherently more practical as an affirmation, might be something like this. As the world around me changes, I change. I think that's way more useful. Why? Because it number one, it positions you, and again, this is a really heady conversation, but it's an important conversation. I think this is vitally important, because my observation, working with hundreds of people in my own coaching practice, some of them sticking with me for like almost 20 years now, because they get that I see something, I see things differently. One of my best friends, actually, he says that, of all the things that I've ever done, he says the thing that you do the most is you help people think differently. And I think that's important, because you can think like a lemming and be led by some douchebag that has no caringness about your reality, or you can actually care about yourself and think in a way which is different than, which produces a different result. I mean, ultimately, we want to do anything differently because we want a different result, right? So I help people really just clarify what is that result and how do we go there, right? Like, let's just do that. Let's not spend time over here because, again, there's so many things I could talk about this. But there's so many people in personal development and self-help and kind of wanting to understand themselves that have this real hard tendency to think that they are more powerful than they actually are. And the reason that's happening is because of their need for significance. They don't feel significant in their life. They don't feel significant enough towards a relationship or in a relationship with some figure in their life. And so therefore they feel inadequate, disempowered, not in control, basically. And so therefore we prop up ourselves to get out of this depression and hold ourselves to this power, right? This is what this affirmation talks about. If we reverse it in the sense of, as the world around me changes, I change. Well, then what we're also doing is actually submitting to the environment and saying that the environment matters. Let me push this one more way. You're in space, and a micro asteroid comes in and just glazes your helmet, and now you have a crack and a little air leak in your helmet in space. Okay, so your environment just changed, and you're going to change. In fact, you're going to die if you don't do something. Okay, so you better get back to the ship, right, or get some duct tape or something, because that's a bad scene. But can you see what, so you have a crack in your helmet in space, and things are changing fast, and now you get this affirmation, and you're like, well, if I change myself, if you change yourself and move back into the space station or something like that, you'll change your environment. But see, that's my point, is that there's certain levels of testing of these affirmations where they don't work anymore, and that's one of them. And so it's like, you'll change actually a heck of a lot faster. What I'm saying here is this, is that you will actually change a heck of a lot faster if what you actually focused on is changing your environment. Why? Because you literally are a reactivity machine towards your environment. It's how you're set up. It's how your biology is set up. It's how your psychology is set up. You have a set of values. That those values live in a hierarchy. And it's specifically laid out in so that you filter your life through what's most meaningful to you versus what's not. There's certain things that are more meaningful to you than other things, and so you have this hierarchy of values inside of you, which filters your reality. And it dictates what you see as supportive and challenging. It dictates what you see as pleasurable and painful. In fact, that's one of the most basic constructs of having a value system. What's good and bad, what's right and wrong, according to that hierarchy, which is unique to everybody. Everyone has this. That's why conflict is inevitable, by the way, because no one has the same values. It's impossible to get anyone to get along 100% of the time. It's never happened. The best you can do is negotiate within value systems. Anyway, long story short, what that also means is that your value system is doing its best to adapt you in your perceptions and the way you see your life to your environment. I have a good friend of mine. This is a good segue into this. His name's George. Really good friend of mine. Really smart guy. Really cares about people. Has a son now. Lives in Montreal. And I was chatting with him a few weeks ago, and we were talking about his dad, because his dad had passed on, and recently. And so, he reached out, and I said, I know your dad died, do you want to work on this? He said, yeah, let's work on that. So I have a process, FYI, I have a process that can completely eliminate grief. So if that's something you're interested in, you can just message me. But it's literally a process where you just practice a series of questions in order over time. It might even take 10 minutes, it might take an hour, it might take 2 hours. But if you do it, I guarantee that you will resolve grief. It will happen. It's inevitable if you just follow this process. And so I just started the process with him. I took one piece of his dad across, one meaningful piece that he was hung up on, and I brought it across the process. And at the end of that process, not even 45 minutes later, he's like, holy crap, wow, my God, I don't feel that grief anymore. How did you do that? And I'm able to do that because I've just thought about it enough. So it's hard to explain. I could probably do a 3-hour freaking training on what I figured out about that and why, because I had to get myself out of that. But one of the stories that George shared with me, and this relates to this conversation, is he, for most of his life, and especially his adult life, was trying everything in his power to help his father be happy. That's all he really wanted, was his dad to be happy. He's like, I just want to see my dad have a loving moment in his life where he's grateful for something. Because like, it's the whole time he's grown up with him, like, Dad's just been this grumpy old man kind of thing, whatever. And so eventually, my friend George literally gets his father, before he dies, to go down to Costa Rica and literally do an ayahuasca ceremony. Now, if you don't know what that is, just look it up. And I've done that, and, to each their own, whatever. And literally in that experience, he saw his father be the father that he wanted. And he was so happy. He's like, oh my God, finally I figured it out. I've solved the puzzle of my father's misery, right? And then, so they have like 2 weeks in Costa Rica, everything's great. And then they come back, and my friend George says, Stephen, it was like night and day. Not even within 12 hours of getting back into his environment, he was back to the exact same pattern. So what does that say? What does that mean? What that tells me is that most people are way, way more affected by their environment than they want to admit. They're way more affected by their relationship partners, as an example, than they want to admit. They're way more affected by their pillow, or the way they set up their office, or the way they set up their home, or the way they set up their kitchen, or whatever it is. They are way more affected than they want to believe. And in fact, of all the research that I've done and all the books that I've read, it's hard for me to even determine what's the environment and what's you. I think it's all the same, actually. So we might say that, yeah, changing yourself, you'll change your environment. Maybe, if you intend on changing your environment. But where I find most people go, and this is the danger mode that I was talking about, is that most people just try to keep changing themselves without ever having an intention to change their environment. And that's a trap, because you can help yourself feel good at any given time. You can help yourself feel bad at any given time. You can stress yourself out in a second if you wanted to. You can just practice the ritual of what it means to be stressed, right? Or what it means to be happy. You can do that at any given moment. But if we're talking about anything more than a momentary insight, or a momentary release of stress, or a momentary oh wow, I feel great today. If we're actually talking about sustainable change, or some kind of sustainable result, which is different than what's normal, then what we must do is change our environment. It's one of the reasons why I spend so much time creating an environment for myself at work, because it matters to me. Because I know that if I surround myself and if I organize the things around me that are important to me, and I know where they are, and I have it all categorized, and I can literally search it on my softwares, then I can relax, because I got my shit together. I have my stuff organized. I've done it in such a way where I like the setup, and it's always evolving, but that's the thing. I'm always evolving. And so therefore my environment evolves, but what I've done is I've realized that, I can try and change myself all day, or I can just do myself the service and say, I'm going to clean my room, or I'm going to clean my environment. I'm going to organize my shit and see how that affects me. I'm going to do this and see how that affects me. I'm going to do this over here and paint this wall and see how that affects me. I'm going to look externally and say, what can I change in my environment to help me emerge more, rather than the alternative, which is actually inherently based upon self-judgment and self-hatred, oddly enough. Because here I am with an affirmation of, if I change myself, the world will change around me. Yeah, well, sure. If you want to continuously indoctrinate yourself into hating your life, yeah, you can do that because that's literally where it comes from. It's like, okay, well, if something's not working in my environment then or my life, then I must change myself. Well, no, man. Maybe you should probably change your water supply first, or drink some filtered water or something, or like you know, get your gut bacteria figured out, or like have a 3 day fast. I did a 3 day fast a couple days ago, and it felt fantastic. But that's me changing my environment to change who I am, not the other way around. So here's a position I want you to just think about. If you're this kind of person and this video is valuable to you, well, think about this. Is it possible that the most loving thing that you could start doing in your life, rather than trying to change yourself first, isn't it possible that the more loving, the more appreciating position is, I'm okay, I'm going to change my environment, and then I'm going to see what happens? Interesting. Because then it's like, yeah, I can judge my environment, but that has nothing to say about me. I might be fine, actually. Maybe my environment sucks. Maybe I'm just living in a basement apartment with moldy carpets and I have sinus problems because of that. Maybe it's not because of me, right? So it's true. This affirmation is kind of true. I change the world around me by changing myself. That is true. But it's not the only way. And in fact, I would say that, changing the environment, changing yourself, changing the environment is probably simultaneous. But it's my observation, and I'll just say it one more time, it's my observation that when I talk with people who are into self-help and personal development, that kind of thing, maybe that's you. Most people, maybe even you, I'll just talk to you for a second. You might be stuck. You might have caught yourself in a positioning like this, where you're like, you know what? My life isn't working, so I got to change myself. And you just got caught into the loop where you're like, I'm going to change myself. Well, it's not working. I got more work to do. These are the common words that I hear. I must be something I'm not learning. Must be some karmic thing that I haven't figured out yet, right? Oh, it's got to be Mercury retrograde or whatever. All these things. No, I guarantee you, actually, if I tracked your behavior, which is one of the things I do with all of my clients now, if I tracked your behavior for 2 weeks, I would have an exact dossier of exactly who you are and how you behave every single day. I would know the bandwidth, the possibility that you have for yourself, your potential bandwidth of changing your life, and I would be able to predict your future for the next 15 fucking years with 2 weeks of data. Literally, it's that easy. And I would show you very quickly what behaviors you like, what behaviors you hate, and how you can change your life incrementally over a period of like 3 to 6 months. And in 6 months, have a much more sustainable energy in your body, a much more sustainable psychology, a much more sustainable emotional depth and range and sense of meaning, which would inherently become more profitable than just spinning your wheels, hating your life, not being aware of what the hell is going on, having no concept of like or no control over your behavior and no control over your environment, while attempting to change your natural inclined reactions to that. That's one of the worst things you can do, is try and always just change your reaction to a shitty environment. It's like, no, maybe the environment just sucks and your reactions are normal. And you should maybe take that initiative and value yourself, that's what it's doing, and move or change your environment or do something differently. It's hard to make water in the desert, Like, that's really hard. You can do it. It's hard. But just because you don't have water, does that mean that you're a fucked up person? Oh, you know what, guys? I'm in the middle of the desert right now, and I don't have any water. Oh, man. God, it's got to be that karmic thing that I haven't dealt with. Yeah, I'm just going to go deal with that. Meanwhile, you're dehydrating and dying. This is my point. My point is, look, appreciate your affirmations, appreciate your insights, love your aha moments and stuff like that. But don't, for the love of God, do yourself a service, and don't make these things like the commandments of your life. Like, stress test them. Do your research. Like, think about the various ways of where these things work and where they don't, so that you can at least have a balanced perspective that just doesn't leave you hanging when you're just working yourself to death trying to be happy in an environment which doesn't require you to be happy. Like, give yourself the benefit of a doubt and be like, maybe there's more than this, more to this puzzle than just me. Maybe you need help. Maybe you need a resource. Maybe you need a friend. Maybe you need some specialist to come in and help you or whatever. But like, too often I find people, including my mom and me and lots of other people that get into self-help stuff, too often I find people just neurotically buying into the self-hatred bandwagon, and that serves that there's benefits to that. But I don't think there's much benefit to it if it's hidden under the guise of think positive and be happy. I don't think that's good. That's not a good situation. So anyway, yeah, welcome to Steve's videos again. Here we go. I hope that was helpful. If that mattered to you or you got something out of that, please leave a comment below. And I shared I have a process for grief. Look, if that's interesting to you and you've got something like that and you're like, fuck, I would love to get over that feeling. I would love to let that go. I'd love to feel complete with that. Then, comment below or just message me and we can set something up. I love doing it. It's a remarkable process. I love doing it because I get to affirm what I built, which is cool. But more importantly, I get to watch people literally go from like emotionally stuck and withdrawn and like trapped in their being in a matter of an hour just by asking some questions and go from there to, oh my God, I have a future. Wow, like that's cool. I love that. That's what I live for. And so there you go. If that inspired you, then consider that. That being said, this video is now closed. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.